In March 1998, Amy Bradley stepped onto a cruise ship with her family, ready for a week of Caribbean sun and celebration. By morning, she was gone, vanished without a trace, her sandals left behind. Her family's world shattered. 27 years later, her face still stares from missing posters. Her name still echoes in FBI files. And her case still begs the question, how does a woman disappear from a ship full of people with no answers, no body, no closure? This is the story of Amy Lynn Bradley, a mystery that began on the Rhapsody of the Seas and never let go. On March 21, 1998, Amy Lynn Bradley, a 23-year-old from Petersburg, Virginia, boarded the Rhapsody of the Seas, a Royal Caribbean cruise ship docked in San Juan, Puerto Rico. She was joined by her parents, Ron and Eva Bradley, and her younger brother Brad for a week-long trip through the Caribbean with stops in Aruba, Curea, and St. Thomas. The cruise was a big deal for the Bradleys, a chance to celebrate Amy's new chapter. She'd just graduated from Longwood University with a degree in physical education, a dream she'd worked toward through years of basketball games and swim meets. At 5'6", with green eyes and a quick laugh, Amy was the kind of person who drew people in, athletic, determined, always ready with a joke. She'd been a lifeguard, a camp counselor, a point guard who could sink a three-pointer under pressure. Now, with a coaching job lined up and a new apartment waiting back home, she was ready to shape kids' lives the way sports had shaped hers. The Bradleys weren't the type to take fancy vacations. Ron ran a home improvement store, Eva sold real estate, and their life in Petersburg revolved around family dinners, church on Sundays, and cheering at Amy and Brad's games. Amy, the older sibling, was the planner, the one who'd organize cookouts or help Brad with his college applications. Brad, 21 and a junior at Virginia Tech, was more laid back, always teasing Amy about her competitive streak. The cruise was Ron's idea, a way to mark Amy's graduation and bring the family together before she started her job. They'd saved up for it, picturing days on the beach, nights laughing over dinner, and memories to carry back to Virginia. Amy packed 15 rolls of film, her camera ready to capture every sunset, every smile, every moment of this rare adventure. Not everyone was sold on the idea at first. Amy loved the water. She'd swum competitively since high school, her strokes strong enough to earn lifeguard certifications, but the open ocean made her nervous. The thought of being miles from land, surrounded by nothing but waves, gave her pause. "I don't know about this," she told Eva over dinner, her brow furrowed. Ron promised they'd stick together, that the ship was safe, with pools and parties to keep her distracted. Brad sealed the deal, joking that she'd regret missing out on the all-you-can-eat buffets. Amy gave in, her excitement slowly outweighing her fear. She boarded the ship with her family, her camera slung over her shoulder, ready to make the most of it. The Rhapsody of the Seas was like nothing the Bradleys had ever seen. A 78,000-ton behemoth, it carried 2,000 passengers and 765 crew across 12 decks of luxury. There were dining rooms serving steak and shrimp, a casino with slot machines flashing, a theater showing musicals, and a solarium with a glass-domed pool. Kids ran through arcades, couples danced in ballrooms, and retirees lounged by hot tubs. The crew from dozens of countries kept it all running, waiters refilling wine glasses, bartenders mixing rum punches, musicians setting the mood. On March 23rd, as the ship sailed from Aruba to Curea, the Stardust Lounge hosted a Mardi Gras party where the Blue Orchid Band played reggae and rock under strings of beads and masks. The energy was high, the dance floor packed, the night alive with possibility. Amy and Brad were right in the middle of it. They'd spent the day in Aruba, wandering markets and snapping photos of colorful buildings. Amy, in a green sundress, her brown hair tied back, danced with Brad to the band's cover of Bob Marley, her laugh cutting through the music. Ron and Eva watched from a table nearby, sipping drinks, happy to see their kids having fun. The family had settled into the cruise's rhythm: mornings by the pool, afternoons exploring ports, evenings at parties like this one. Amy's camera was never far, her rolls of film filling with shots of Brad hamming it up, Eva posing by a palm tree, Ron squinting in the sun. It was the kind of trip you'd talk about for years, the kind that felt like a gift. But not everything felt right. Amy, sharp and observant, had noticed a few crew members paying her extra attention. One stood out: Alistair "Yellow" Douglas, the Blue Orchid's bassist, a Jamaican musician with a flashy smile and a knack for working the crowd. He'd chatted with Amy at the disco a few nights earlier, asking about her trip, offering her a drink. She'd been polite but distant, something about his insistence rubbing her the wrong way. On March 23rd, he approached her again, complimenting her dress, standing a little too close. Amy mentioned it to Brad later, saying Douglas seemed to pop up everywhere near the gin, by the buffet, at the bar. "He's just friendly," Brad said, but Amy shook her head. "It's too much," she told him, her voice low. She didn't make a scene, didn't want to ruin the night, but her unease was real, a small crack in the cruise's perfect surface. The night stretched on, the rhapsody of the seas gliding through the Caribbean under a blanket of stars. The Mardi Gras party wound down, the Blue Orchid packing up their instruments, the dance floor emptying. CCTV caught Amy and Brad leaving the Stardust Lounge around 1 o'clock a.m., Amy's green dress swaying, Brad's arms slung over her shoulder. They headed to their Deck 8 cabin, a suite with a private balcony overlooking the sea. The ship was quieter now, the hum of engines blending with the waves below. For the Bradleys, it was another day of vacation, another memory to tuck away. Amy kicked off her sandals, maybe stepped onto the balcony to feel the breeze, her cigarettes and lighter in hand. Ron and Eva turned in, Brad crashed on his bunk, and the cabin settled into sleep. But by morning, Amy would be gone, her absence a mystery that would tear her family apart and leave the world asking, what happened on that ship? For the Bradleys, this was the trip of a lifetime. In just a few hours, it would become their worst nightmare. On March 23, 1998, the Rhapsody of the Seas was alive with the pulse of a Caribbean night, its decks humming with music and laughter. For Amy Lynn Bradley, a 23-year-old from Petersburg, Virginia, it was a night of dancing and family, a moment of joy captured on grainy CCTV footage as she swayed to the Blue Orchid Band's reggae beats in the Stardust Lounge. By 6 o'clock a.m. the next morning, Amy was gone, vanished from her family's cabin, leaving behind her sandals, her dreams, and a mystery that would baffle investigators for decades. In those fleeting hours, something happened on that ship, something that turned a dream vacation into a nightmare. What became of Amy Bradley? And why did the people who could have helped her wait so long to act? The night of March 23rd had been one to remember for the Bradley family. Amy and her brother Brad had spent hours at the Mardi Gras-themed party in the ship's disco, drinking rum and cokes, dancing under flashing lights, and laughing with fellow passengers. The Blue Orchid Band kept the crowd moving, their bassist Alistair "Yellow" Douglas, a charismatic figure who worked the room with ease. CCTV footage from 1 o'clock a.m. showed Amy chatting briefly with Douglas near the bar, her green sundress catching the light, her posture relaxed but cautious. Brad, ever the protective sibling, stayed close, later recalling how Amy seemed a little uneasy with Douglas's attention. By 3:35 a.m., Brad headed back to their Deck 8 cabin, a suite with a private balcony overlooking the dark Caribbean Sea. Door lock records confirmed Amy followed at 3:40 a.m., slipping into the cabin where their parents, Ron and Eva, were already asleep. The cabin was a cozy retreat, its beige walls adorned with nautical prints, its balcony offering a view of the stars, and the gentle waves below. Amy, still buzzing from the night, stepped outside to smoke, a habit she'd picked up in college. She settled into a deck chair, her cigarettes and lighter on the table beside her, the cool March-era contrast to the disco's heat. Ron, waking briefly around 5:15 a.m., saw her there, slumped in the chair, seemingly asleep, her head tilted back, her body relaxed. He didn't disturb her, figuring she'd come inside soon, and drifted back to sleep. When he woke again at 6 o'clock a.m., the cabin was quiet, the balcony door slightly ajar, a faint breeze stirring the curtains. Amy was gone. Her sandals lay near the chair, her cigarettes and lighter were missing, but her purse, ID, and camera remained untouched on the cabin's dresser. The railing, chest-high and sturdy, showed no signs of disturbance. In those 45 minutes, Amy Bradley had vanished. Ron's first thought was that Amy had wandered off, maybe to grab coffee or smoke in one of the ship's lounges. A practical man, he pulled on his shoes and began searching the Rhapsody of the seas, starting with the solarium, where Amy liked to watch the sunrise, then the dining hall, where early risers sipped coffee. The ship, still waking up as it approached Curea, felt vast, its corridors stretching endlessly, its 12 decks a maze of possibilities. Finding no trace, Ron's knees turned to dread. He returned to the cabin, waking Eva and Brad, his voice tight. "Amy's not here," he said, the words heavy in the morning light. The family checked the cabin again, hoping for a clue. Her sandals, neatly paired, suggested she hadn't planned to go far. The missing cigarettes and lighter hinted she'd stepped out briefly, maybe to the deck above or a nearby lounge. But her purse, with her cash and ID, and her camera, with its precious rolls of film, told a different story. She hadn't intended to leave the ship. The Bradleys turned to the crew, their panic mounting. They found a steward near the elevator and explained Amy was missing, last seen on their balcony, not in any of the common areas. They begged for a ship-wide search, for the captain to lock down the Rhapsody of the seas before it docked in Curea, where 2,000 passengers would soon disembark. "She's still here," Eva pleaded, her voice shaking. "She has to be," but the crew's response was maddeningly calm. The purser, a man in a crisp uniform, assured them Amy was probably fine, maybe sleeping off the night in a friend's cabin or exploring the port. He cited passenger enjoyment, saying a full search would disrupt the morning's activities: breakfast buffets, shore excursions, the carefully planned chaos of docking. The Bradleys pushed back, explaining Amy's fear of the ocean, her closeness to family, her lack of shoes or ID. "She wouldn't just leave," Brad insisted, his hands clenched. But their pleas fell flat, the crew's faces polite but unmoved. As the ship docked in Curea at 7 o'clock a.m., passengers strained off, their suitcases rolling behind them, their voices bright with plans for the island's beaches and markets. The Bradleys watched helpless as the crowd thinned, knowing every moment made it harder to find Amy. At 7:50 a.m., nearly 2 hours after Ron's first alarm, the crew finally made an announcement over the intercom: "Will Amy Bradley please come to the purser's desk?" The words, tepid and vague, echoed through the ship's halls, drowned out by the clatter of breakfast trays and the hum of departing buses. No one responded. The Bradleys, now frantic, demanded action: a search of every cabin, every deck, every corner of the ship. But the crew hesitated, citing privacy concerns, unwilling to disturb sleeping passengers or rummage through private rooms. Instead, they organized a cursory search at 12:15 p.m., hours after docking, checking only public areas: lounges, gyms, the casino places Ron had already scoured. By 1 o'clock p.m., the search was over, the crew shrugging, saying Amy wasn't on board. The narrator's voice slows, heavy with implication. Why did the crew wait so long? Why was there no lockdown, no urgency, as 2,000 passengers walked off the ship into Curaçao's streets? What opportunities slipped away in those critical hours? When Amy might have been just steps away, the Bradleys' frustration was palpable, their trust in the cruise line crumbling. Ron, a man used to fixing problems, felt powerless, his eyes scanning the docks as if Amy might appear. Eva, clutching Brad's arm, repeated, "She's here. I know she is," her voice breaking. Brad, usually the joker, was silent, replaying the night, wondering if he should have stayed with Amy longer. The family refused to leave the ship, staying in their cabin, hoping for news, their vacation now a vigil. The crew, under pressure from the Bradleys, offered their own theories. Maybe Amy had fallen overboard, they suggested, pointing to the balcony's railing. But the family rejected this outright. Amy was a trained lifeguard, her swimming skills honed through years of competition. The railing, at 42 inches, was too high for an accidental fall, and there were no signs of a struggle, no stuffs, no broken chair, no cries heard by nearby cabins. Besides, Amy's fear of the ocean made her cautious. She'd never lean over the edge, especially not barefoot, with her sandals left behind. Another theory floated by the crew was that Amy had left voluntarily, maybe wandered into Curea to explore. But this made even less sense. Amy had no ID, no money, no shoes, nothing to suggest she'd planned to leave. Her new job, her apartment, her family's closeness gave her every reason to stay. She was happy, Ron told the purser, his voice firm. She wouldn't run off. By late morning, the Netherlands Antilles Coast Guard was alerted, launching a 4-day search of the waters around Curea. A Royal Caribbean chartered boat joined, scanning the sea for any sign of body, a piece of clothing, a clue. Helicopters buzzed overhead, their rotors cutting through the humid air, while divers checked the harbor's depths. The Bradleys watched from the ship's deck, their hope fading with each empty report. The search found nothing, no trace of Amy, no evidence she'd gone overboard. The cruise line, now facing scrutiny, contacted the FBI, who would board in St. Thomas days later. But in those first hours, as the ship sat docked, the Bradleys were alone, their questions unanswered, their daughter gone. The Rhapsody of the seas, once a symbol of escape, now felt like a trap, its gleaming decks hiding something the Bradleys couldn't see. The crew's inaction, their dismissive theories, their refusal to act swiftly, left a bitter taste, a sense that something was being overlooked or worse, concealed. As the sun climbed higher over Curea, the Bradleys stood together, staring at the horizon, unwilling to believe Amy was lost to the sea. They didn't know it yet. But this was just the beginning, a mystery that would stretch across years, continents, and countless unanswered questions, with Amy's fate hanging in the balance. When Amy Lynn Bradley vanished from the Rhapsody of the Seas on March 24, 1998, the Bradley family's world collapsed. Their 23-year-old daughter, last seen asleep on their cabin's balcony, was gone, no trace, no witnesses, no answers. As the ship docked in Curea, the cruise line's tepid response left the Bradleys stranded in their grief, their pleas for a lockdown ignored. But the mystery of Amy's disappearance was just beginning. Every lead seemed to promise answers, yet each one pulled them further into a maze of dead ends, red herrings, and haunting possibilities. What happened to Amy in those lost hours? And who or what was keeping her from coming home? The investigation into Amy's disappearance didn't gain traction until the Rhapsody of the Seas reached St. Thomas, 2 days after she vanished. The FBI boarded the ship, their jurisdiction shaky in the international waters of the Caribbean, where the Liberian-registered vessel operated under a patchwork of laws. The Netherlands Antilles authorities, responsible for Curea, had searched the seas but found nothing, no body, no debris, no sign Amy had gone overboard. The FBI, led by Agent Mark Sullivan, interviewed the Bradleys, their questions thorough but limited by the ship's foreign status. They couldn't seize records or detain crew without cause, and Royal Caribbean's attorney hovered nearby, monitoring every conversation, a presence that set Ron Bradley's nerves on edge. It felt like they were protecting the company, not helping us, he later told reporters, his voice thick with frustration. The family's distrust grew when they learned the ship's photographer, who'd taken dozens of photos of Amy during the cruise, claimed several were missing shots from the Mardi Gras party on March 23rd, where Amy had danced under the disco lights. Were they lost or deliberately removed? The question gnawed at the Bradleys, a small but maddening loose end. Early theories from the cruise line accident or suicide were quickly dismissed. The idea that Amy fell overboard didn't hold up. She was a trained lifeguard, her instincts sharp from years of swimming in rough waters. The balcony railing, 42 inches high, was nearly impossible to topple over, especially for someone 5'6" and sober by 5:15 a.m. when Ron saw her asleep. No splash, no cries, no disturbance had been reported by nearby cabins. Suicide was even less plausible. Amy was excited about her new coaching job, her apartment in Petersburg, her plans to travel with friends. She was happy, Eva told the FBI, her hands trembling. She had everything to live for. The Bradleys' insistence forced investigators to look elsewhere, to the ship itself, where 2,000 passengers and 765 crew held potential clues if only they could be reached. Suspicion soon fell on Alistair "Yellow" Douglas, the Blue Orchid Band's bassist, whose interactions with Amy had left her uneasy. CCTV from March 23rd showed Douglas near Amy at the Stardust Lounge around 1 o'clock a.m., his smile wide as they spoke briefly at the bar. Brad, watching from the dance floor, hadn't thought much of it then, but after Amy vanished, a memory surfaced, sharp and unsettling. Hours after her disappearance, before the crew's 7:50 a.m. announcement, Douglas approached Brad in a hallway near the casino, his voice low. "I'm sorry about your sister," he said, then walked away. Brad froze, the words landing like a punch. How did Douglas know Amy was missing? The family hadn't told anyone outside the crew, and no public alert had been made. When Brad shared this with the FBI, it became a focal point. Ron, already wary of Douglas's persistent attention to Amy, compliments by the pool, lingering glances at dinner, noted his demeanor during FBI interviews. "He was smirking," Ron said, "like he knew something we didn't." Douglas denied involvement, claiming he'd overheard crew chatter about a missing passenger. He passed a polygraph, his answers steady. But the Bradleys weren't convinced, their instincts screaming that he was hiding more. The investigation's challenges mounted, but a series of eyewitness sightings began to shift the narrative, each one more disturbing than the last. In March 1998, as the Bradleys searched Curaçao's docks, a taxi driver approached them with a story. He claimed that on the morning of Amy's disappearance, while the Rhapsody was docking, he saw a woman matching her description: brown hair, green eyes, about 5'6", running through a parking lot near the port. She was barefoot, frantic, asking for a payphone. But before he could help, she vanished into the crowd. The driver's description of her eyes, vivid and striking, matched Amy's, but with no name or follow-up, the lead fizzled, leaving the Bradleys grasping at hope. They walked the port streets, calling Amy's name, their voices lost in the hum of tourists and vendors. 5 months later, in August 1998, another sighting reignited the case. Canadian diver David Carmichael, vacationing at Playa Porto Maria in Curea, spotted a woman on the beach who looked eerily like Amy. She was with two men, their demeanor aggressive, their eyes scanning the crowd. Carmichael, a former cop with a knack for details, noticed her tattoos: a Tasmanian devil on her shoulder, a sun on her lower back, a Chinese symbol on her ankle, a gecko on her navel, identical to the ones the Bradleys had described to the FBI. When he spoke English to a nearby vendor, the woman's head snapped up, her eyes meeting his, a flicker of recognition before one of the men pulled her away. Carmichael swore one of the men resembled Douglas, though the distance blurred his certainty. By the time he reached the spot, the trio was gone, swallowed by the beach's chaos. He reported it to the FBI, testifying under oath, but Curea police couldn't locate the group, and the trio went cold. A third sighting, in 1999, was even more chilling. A U.S. Navy sailor, stationed in Curea, claimed he met a woman at a brothel who identified herself as Amy Bradley. She was thin, her face drawn, and when he asked her name, she whispered, "Amy, from Virginia," adding, "I'm being held here. I need help." Fearing discipline for visiting the brothel, the sailor waited months to report it, only coming forward after seeing Amy's face on America's Most Wanted. By then, the brothel had burned down, its records destroyed, its workers scattered. The FBI followed up, but with no physical evidence. The lead dissolved, another gut punch for the Bradleys. The narrator pauses. 3 sightings, 3 chances to find Amy. Each one slipped away, but each one pointed to a darker possibility, something far worse than an accident. The sightings fueled a growing theory: human trafficking. The Caribbean, with its proximity to Venezuela's drug trade routes, was a known hub for smuggling and exploitation. Could Amy have been taken off the ship, hidden among the 2,000 passengers who disembarked in Curea, enabled by the cruise line's delay? The Bradleys began to wonder if crew members, with access to restricted areas like laundry rooms or cargo holds, had played a role. The missing photos, Douglas's odd comment, the cursory search, all fed their suspicion of a cover-up, a fear that Royal Caribbean prioritized its reputation over their daughter's life. The FBI interviewed crew, but the ship's transient workforce, many from Jamaica, the Philippines, Eastern Europe, made tracking them difficult. Some had left the company by April, their whereabouts unknown, their statements unverified. Then came a twist that broke the Bradleys' hearts all over again. In 1999, a private investigator named Frank Jones contacted the family, claiming he had proof Amy was alive, held by drug lords in Curea. He described a network of traffickers operating from a fortified compound, and said a cook at a local restaurant had seen Amy, identifying her by her tattoos. Jones painted a vivid picture. Amy was being moved between safe houses, her captors planning to sell her to a cartel. He demanded $210,000 for a rescue operation, promising to infiltrate the compound with ex-military operatives. The Bradleys, desperate for hope, raised the money through loans and savings, wiring it to Jones. For weeks, he sent updates, photos of a supposed safe house, recordings of alleged informants, keeping the family on edge. But in early 2000, Jones's own team exposed him as a fraud, admitting he'd fabricated the story, preying on the Bradleys' pain. The FBI arrested him for wire fraud, and he was sentenced to 5 years, but the damage was done. The scam stole not just money but time, diverting resources from real searchers, leaving the Bradleys humiliated and heartbroken. The Jones betrayal was a cruel blow, but it didn't stop the Bradleys. They kept pushing the FBI, who now leaned toward the trafficking theory, given the sightings and Curaçao's underworld connections. The family's frustration with Royal Caribbean grew. Their calls for crew records and security footage met with vague promises and legal stonewalling. The narrator's voice sharpens. Was Amy taken by someone on that ship, crew, passenger, or stranger? Did the cruise line's hours-long delay, their refusal to lock down, give her captors the window they needed? And why did those photos of Amy, taken just hours before she vanished, disappear, The questions hung heavy, each citing a thread in a tapestry of possibilities. Each twist a reminder that Amy's fate was still out there, somewhere beyond the horizon. When Amy Lynn Bradley vanished from the Rhapsody of the Seas on March 24, 1998, the Bradley family's life was forever altered. Their vibrant 23-year-old daughter, last seen on their cabin's balcony, had disappeared into a void of unanswered questions, leaving behind only her sandals and a family's shattered hope. The stalled FBI investigation, the cruise line's inaction, and a cruel scam by a fake private investigator had pushed the Bradleys to the edge, yet they refused to let Amy's story fade. For years, they fought on television screens in Caribbean alleys, in the halls of Congress to keep her name alive, to demand answers, to challenge a system that seemed to turn its back. But each step forward brought new pain, new mysteries, and a haunting lead that would force them to confront the darkest possibilities. Amy's absence became their mission, their grief a call to change a world that had failed her. The Bradleys' crusade to find Amy was nothing short of relentless. By late 1998, with the FBI's leads drying up and Royal Caribbean offering little help, Ron and Eva took matters into their own hands. They flew back to Curea, walking the port's crowded streets, taping Amy's missing posters to lampposts, asking shopkeepers and taxi drivers if they'd seen a woman with green eyes and a Tasmanian devil tattoo. They followed every tip, no matter how faint a bartender's vague memory, a tourist's blurry photo, a fisherman's claim of a strange boat near the docks. Each trip drained their savings, but they kept going, driven by a mother's instinct, a father's resolve, a brother's guilt. Eva, her voice breaking on America's Most Wanted in 1999, told the world, "We came home without our daughter. We need her back." The family launched a website, Emma Bradley Net, plastering it with Amy's photos smiling at her graduation, laughing on the cruise alongside a $250,000 reward for her safe return and a $25,000 FBI reward for information leading to arrests. Their media campaign was tireless. They appeared on Dr. Phil, Oprah, and The Montel Williams Show, recounting Amy's story to millions, their faces etched with exhaustion but their words unwavering. Ron described the balcony where he'd last seen her asleep at 5:15 a.m., his voice catching as he said, "I should have woken her." Brad, now in his mid-20s, spoke of their last night, dancing at the Stardust Lounge, how he'd told Amy, "I love you," before heading to bed. "I keep thinking," he said on Dr. Phil in 2004, "if I'd stayed with her, maybe she'd be here." The family's raw grief resonated, turning Amy's face, her green eyes, her bright smile into a national symbol of loss. In Petersburg, Virginia, their small town rallied, holding vigils at the First Baptist Church, raising funds for search trips, and tying yellow ribbons around oak trees along Sycamore Street. But the lack of closure was a weight no community could lift, a wound that deepened with every empty lead. In 2005, 7 years after Amy's disappearance, a chilling breakthrough shook the Bradleys' fragile hope. An anonymous email arrived at their website, containing photos from a defunct Caribbean prostitution website. The images showed a woman called Jas posed on a bed, her expression vacant, her body thin and worn. The Bradleys stared at the screen, their hearts racing. The woman's face, though gaunt, bore an uncanny resemblance to Amy's, same jawline, same nose, same haunted green eyes. Eva, clutching Ron's hand, whispered, "It's her. It's Amy." An independent forensics expert, hired by the family, analyzed the photos and called it a perfect match, noting the woman's distressed demeanor. "It wasn't the Amy I know," Eva later told Dateline. "She looked tormented, like she'd been through hell." The FBI chased the lead, tracing the website to a server in the Netherlands Antilles, but the site had been shut down, its operators untraceable. No metadata, no IP address, no way to confirm if Jas was Amy. The photos reignited the family's worst fear, that Amy had been trafficked, held against her will, her vibrant spirit broken by years of captivity. The jazz photos were a gut-wrenching blow, but they also fueled the Bradleys' resolve. They pressed the FBI to reopen trafficking inquiries, pointing to Curaçao's proximity to Venezuela, a known hub for human smuggling. They revisited earlier sightings: the 1998 taxi driver's account of a frantic woman, the 1998 diver's encounter on a beach, the 1999 sailor's story of a brothel captive, all pointing to a pattern. Could Amy have been taken off the Rhapsody of the seas during those chaotic hours when the crew refused to lock down? The family's suspicions turned to Royal Caribbean, whose delayed search and missing photos felt like more than incompetence. In 1999, they sued the cruise line for negligence, alleging it failed to protect Amy, failed to search promptly, failed to preserve evidence like the photographer's images. Royal Caribbean's defense was cold. They'd acted appropriately, they said, claiming no legal duty to lock down the ship or alert passengers sooner. The lawsuit dragged on for years, ending in a settlement the Bradleys called hollow, its terms undisclosed but its outcome a bitter reminder of the cruise line's untouchability. The case's ripple effects went far beyond the courtroom. Amy's story sparked a public outcry over cruise ship safety, exposing a grim reality. Crimes at sea, from theft to assault, often went unreported, lost in the legal gray zone of international waters. In 2006, the Bradleys testified at congressional hearings, their voices steady as they described the Rhapsody's inaction, the FBI's limitations, the agony of searching alone. "We begged them to help," Ron told lawmakers, "and they told us to wait." Their testimony, alongside other families' stories, led to the Cruise Vessel Security and Safety Act of 2010. Signed by President Obama. The law mandated better crime reporting, security cameras, and peepholes on cabin doors, small but critical steps toward accountability. Advocacy groups like International Cruise Victims, founded by affected families, credited Amy's case with shining a light on an industry that had long dodged scrutiny. But for the Bradleys, the reforms were too late. A bandage on a wound that refused to heal. The impact on the Bradleys was profound. Their lives reshaped by Amy's absence. Their Petersburg home, once filled with laughter and basketball games, became a search headquarters, its dining room cluttered with case files, maps of Korea, and photos of Amy graduation day. Christmas morning, the cruise's first night. Ron, once a steady manager, took early retirement, his days spent chasing weeds, his nights haunted by the image of Amy on the balcony. Eva, who'd sold homes with a smile, withdrew, her energy poured into the website and media appearances, her voice a lifeline for other missing persons' families. Brad, now working in Richmond, carried a quieter pain, his guilt over leaving Amy at the disco a shadow he couldn't shake. "I should have walked her back," he told a reporter in 2008, his eyes distant. The family clung to the sightings, refusing to believe Amy was gone. In 2010, when a Virginia court declared her legally dead for insurance purposes, the Bradleys rejected it, Eva saying, "She's out there." "I feel it." Petersburg, a town of 30,000, wrapped the Bradleys in support, but the lack of answers strained even the tightest community. Neighbors organized fundraisers at the high school gym, where Amy had once played point guard, raising money for search trips. Local businesses displayed her poster: green eyes, brown hair, tattoos listed in bold. The annual vigil at First Baptist grew smaller over time, but Amy's friends, now parents themselves, kept her name alive, teaching their kids about the girl who'd lit up their youth. Yet the weight of not knowing was relentless, a question that hung over every gathering. Where was Amy? The jazz photos, the trafficking theories, the cruise line's stonewalling all pointed to a truth just out of reach, a truth the Bradleys refused to stop chasing. The Rhapsody of the seas sailed on, its decks filled with new passengers, new parties, new dreams. But for the Bradleys, it remained a ghost ship, a place where their daughter's life had been stolen. Their fight had changed laws, raised awareness, and kept Amy's face in the public eye, but it hadn't brought her home. The 2005 photos, with their tormenting promise, were a reminder that Amy's story wasn't over, that somewhere, in the shadows of the Caribbean or beyond, answers waited. And the Bradleys would never stop searching. 27 years after Amy Lynn Bradley vanished from the Rhapsody of the Seas on March 24, 1998, her name still lingers in the minds of those who knew her, those who searched for her, and those who've never met her but can't let her story go. The Bradley family's fight through media lawsuits and relentless searches forced the world to look at the dark underbelly of a cruise ship's paradise, sparking laws and advocacy that changed an industry. Yet, for all their efforts, Amy's fate remains a question mark, a mystery woven from fleeting sightings, suspicious delays, and theories that refuse to settle. The Rhapsody of the Seas sailed on, but Amy's absence left a void filled with what-ifs, questions that haunt her family, her town, and a global audience still gripped by her case. What happened in those critical hours after 5:15 a.m.? Who knows the truth? And why, after decades, does Amy's story still feel so close, yet so far from resolution? The unanswered questions in Amy's case are as persistent as the Caribbean waves that carried the Rhapsody of the Seas. Why did Royal Caribbean wait nearly 2 hours to announce Amy's disappearance, allowing 2,000 passengers to disembark into Curaçao's chaos? Why was the ship's search limited to public areas, ignoring cabins and crew quarters where Amy might have been hidden? The missing photographer's photos, snapped during the Mardi Gras party on March 23rd, remain a sore point. Were they misplaced or deliberately withheld? And what about Alistair Yellow Douglas, the Blue Orchid bassist who told Brad, "I'm sorry about your sister," before any public alert? Was it a slip, a sign he knew more than he let on? Or just an innocent remark based on crew gossip? Douglas passed a polygraph, but the Bradleys never trusted it. Ron insisting his smirking demeanor during FBI interviews hid something. The investigation's biggest hurdle was the jurisdictional Mesa Liberian registered ship, sailing in Netherlands Antilles waters, left the FBI scrambling for authority, their hands tied by international laws that favored the cruise line over a grieving family. Theories about Amy's fate have swirled for decades, each one a lens through which her disappearance is viewed, none offering closure. The simplest theory, pushed early by Royal Caribbean, is an overboard accident. Some crew suggested Amy, possibly intoxicated from the disco, stumbled over the balcony's 42-inch railing. But the Bradleys and investigators dismissed this. Amy was a trained lifeguard, her swimming skills honed through years of competition. Even if she fell, she'd likely survive long enough to be spotted. The railing was chest-high, requiring deliberate effort to climb, and no splash or cries were reported. Most damningly, for days of Coast Guard searches found no body, no clothing, no trace in the Caribbean's clear waters. If she fell, Eva told Dateline in 2005, where is she? The sea doesn't just swallow someone whole. The most compelling and chilling theory is human trafficking. The 1998 taxi driver's sighting of a frantic woman, the 1998 diver's encounter with a tattooed woman on a Curea beach, the 1999 sailor's brothel story, and the 2005 jazz photos all point to Amy being abducted and held against her will. The Caribbean's proximity to Venezuela, a hub for drug and human smuggling, lends weight to this. Online forums buzz with speculation that crew members, with access to restricted areas like laundry carts or cargo holds, could have smuggled Amy off during the chaotic disembarkation. The jazz photos, with their perfect forensic match and tormented expression, are the theory's cornerstone, a haunting image the Bradleys can't unsee. "I believe she's out there trapped," Ron said in 2008. his voice steady but raw. The theory gained traction after the FBI noted Caracol's role in trafficking routes, but without hard evidence, it remains a heart-wrenching possibility. Another theory focuses on crew involvement, with Dubas as the primary suspect. His attention to Amy compliments, drinks, lingering presence set her on edge, and his pre-announcement comment to Brad raised red flags. Online sleuths on Reddit and web sleuths theorize crew could hide someone in service areas, unchecked during docking, using their knowledge of the ship's layout. A former cruise worker, posting anonymously in 2010, claimed staff often bypassed security, moving contraband in laundry bins, a method that could conceal a person. Dubas denied everything, and no other crew were formally investigated, but the Bradleys believe someone on board knew more. Their silence protected by the cruise line's legal wall, a less prominent but persistent theory. Is random abduction. The taxi driver's account of barefoot woman running, asking for a payphone suggests Amy might have been taken by a passenger or Curaçao local exploiting the port as disorder. The ship's open gangways, with minimal security checks, allowed anyone to blend into the departing crowd. A 2003 tip from a Curaçao resident, claiming a woman resembling Amy was seen in a van near the port, went nowhere, but it keeps this theory alive. Could Amy have been targeted by an opportunist, someone who saw her alone, vulnerable, in those early morning hours? Missed opportunities haunt the Bradleys most of all. They believe a ship locked down at 6 o'clock a.m., when Ron first sounded the alarm, could have found Amy perhaps in a cabin, a storage room, or a crew area. The crew's delay until 12:15 p.m., and their refusal to search private spaces, let critical hours slip away. Later sightings deepened the frustration. In 2005, a Canadian tourist in a Barbados restroom claimed a woman named Amy, with tattoos matching Bradley's, whispered, "I'm being washed. Help me." Two men entered, and she fell silent, leaving before the tourist could act. The FBI investigated, but the woman was gone, the lead unverified. Each mischance was a dagger, a reminder that Amy might have been close, reachable, if only someone had acted faster. The case's broader implications reach far beyond the Bradleys' pain. Amy's disappearance exposed gaping holes in cruise ship safety, lax security, unreported crimes, and a legal limbo in international waters that shielded companies like Royal Caribbean. The 2010 Cruise Vessel Security and Safety Act, spurred by Amy's case, was a start, mandating crime logs and cameras, but advocates say it's not enough. Groups like International Cruise Victims, founded in 2006, cite Amy's story as a rallying cry pushing for stricter oversight and passenger protections. The case forces a question: do perfect vacations on cruise ships hide dangers we way too quick to ignore? In 2019, over 30 million people cruised globally, many unaware of the risks Amy's story laid bare, risks of vanishing, with no one held accountable. Petersburg, Virginia, carries Amy's absence like a collective scar. The town of 30,000 mourned her through vigils at First Baptist Church, where candles flickered under her high school portrait. A scholarship in her name, funded by local businesses, supports student athletes, a nod to Amy's basketball days. Her friends, now in their 40s, share her story with their children, describing a woman who'd coached them through a missed shot or laugh until she cried. But not everyone agrees on how to honor her. In 2020, a friend's father posted on Reddit, arguing Amy likely fell overboard, urging sleuths to stop sensationalizing her as a puzzle. She was a person, he wrote, not a mystery to exploit. The post sparked debate, with some agreeing her memory deserves peace, others insisting the trafficking clues demand answers. Online communities, Reddit, web sleuths, Facebook groups keep her case alive, parsing sightings and crew rosters, their posts a mix of hope and obsession. The questions in Amy's case are a mirror. reflecting our fears about safety, trust, and the places we escaped to. Was she taken, hidden in plain sight as passengers walked past? Did the cruise line's inaction seal her fate? Or did the sea claim her, despite everything her family believes? Amy's story challenges us to rethink the systems we rely on, the strangers we trust, the vacations we assume are safe. In Petersburg, her high school gym still echoes with her laughter, her posters still hang in diners, her family still waits. The Rhapsody of the Seas is gone, scrapped in 2022, but Amy's mystery endures, a call to keep asking, keep searching, keep her name alive. Amy Lynn Bradley's disappearance on March 24, 1998, left a mark that time has not erased. 27 years later, her face, those green eyes, that bright smile still gazes from missing posters in Petersburg, Virginia, and FBI bulletins across the globe. Her story, born on the glittering decks of the Rhapsody of the Seas, exposed a truth no one wanted to face. Even in the heart of a dream vacation, safety can be an illusion, and a single moment can change everything. The Bradley family's fight through lawsuits, television pleas, and boots-on-the-ground searches in Korea did more than keep Amy's name alive. It forced an industry to reckon with its failures, sparked laws to protect millions, and reminded us all that some mysteries demand we keep asking questions no matter how long it takes. Amy's case is a wound that won't heal, a call that won't quiet, a story that begs us to listen, to act, to never let her be forgotten. The legacy of Amy Bradley is one of resilience and revelation. Her vanishing from a cruise ship, surrounded by 2,000 passengers and 765 crew, peeled back the curtain on an industry that thrived on luxury but sidestepped accountability. The Bradleys battle suing Royal Caribbean, testifying before Congress, and during the heartbreak of the 2005 JAS photos led to the Cruise Vessel Security and Safety Act of 2010, a law that mandated crime reporting, security cameras, and better passenger protections. It wasn't enough to bring Amy home, but it ensured her story saved others, making cruises safer for the 30 million people who board ships each year in Petersburg, her hometown. Amy's spirit lives on through a scholarship for student athletes, funded by the same community that tied yellow ribbons and prayed for her return. Her friends, now raising families of their own, speak of her at high school reunions, recalling the point guard who'd rally her team with a grin, the lifeguard who'd dive into any challenge. For Ron, Eva, and Brad, Amy's absence is a daily ache, their home a shrine of case files and photos, their hope sustained by a $250 zero reward for her safe return and a $25,000 FBI reward for information leading to arrests. But Amy's legacy is more than rewards, and reforms it as a challenge to us all. Her case asks us to look closer, to question the systems we take for granted, to notice the moments we might overlook. Why did the crew wait hours to search the Rhapsody of the Seas? Who was the woman in the JAS photos, and why couldn't the FBI find her? What did Alistair Douglas know when he spoke to Brad before Amy's disappearance was announced? These questions aren't just puzzles, they're warnings, reminders that truth can slip away in the places we feel safest, on a cruise ship, in a small town, in the middle of a crowd. Amy's story pushes us to ask, who else is missing, their stories untold, their families waiting in the dark? Her case isn't just hers, it's a mirror, reflecting the countless others who vanish each year, their names fading unless we keep them alive. This is where you come in. Amy's story isn't over, and neither is the search for answers. The FBI still seeks tips, no matter how small. A memory from a 1998 cruise, a sighting in Korea, a detail about the Rhapsody of the Seas crew. If you know something, call or visit tips.fbi.gov. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think happened to Amy? Do you believe she's still out there, as her family does, or did the sea claim her, as some argue? Have you heard of similar cases, disappearances at sea, leads that went cold? Join our community on X, Instagram, and YouTube, where thousands are discussing Amy's case, sharing theories, and keeping her name in the spotlight. Subscribe now to stay with us, because every voice, every idea, every tip could be the one that cracks this mystery wide open. The Bradleys never stopped fighting, and neither should we. Ron, now in his 70s, still checks the family website daily, hoping for an email that changes everything. Eva, her strength worn but unbroken, speaks at missing persons events, urging families to trust their instincts, to push harder than she could. Brad, carrying the weight of that last "I love you too, Amy," mentors young athletes in Richmond, teaching them the resilience Amy embodied. Their home, filled with her graduation photos and cruise snapshots, is a testament to a love that endures, a belief that Amy's story isn't finished. The Rhapsody of the Seas was scrapped in 2022, its decks dismantled, but Amy's case lives on billboards and FBI files, in the hearts of a town that won't let her go. Her tattoos: a Tasmanian devil, a sun, a gecko remain a beacon, a hope that someone somewhere will recognize her and bring her home. As we close Amy's chapter, we turn to another mystery, one that echoes her story but carries its own shadows. In our next episode, we travel to a quiet coastal town in Maine, where a young father, Daniel Lewis, vanishes after a late-night walk in October 2015. His pickup truck is found idling on a pier, its door open, its headlights cutting through the fog. His phone pings 20 miles away in a dense forest, but no trace of Daniel is found. A local fisherman, out mending nets that night, swears he saw Daniel with a stranger near the docks, their voices low, their movements hurried. But the police dismiss him, calling it a drunken ramble, and the case grows cold. What secrets was Daniel carrying? Who was the man in the shadows, and why did the town's tight-knit community stay silent? Daniel's wife, Sarah, and their 2 young daughters still wait, their lives on hold, their questions unanswered. Daniel's story, like Amy's, is a puzzle with pieces missing, a call to uncover truths hidden in plain sight. Was he running from something, or was he taken? Did the fisherman's story hold the key, or was it a distraction? We'll walk the pier where Daniel's truck sat, talk to the fisherman whose tale was ignored, and ask why a town known for its loyalty closed ranks. Share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think happened to Daniel Lewis? Have you heard whispers of similar vanishings in small towns? Your ideas could spark the breakthrough Sarah Lewis needs, just as Amy's family hopes for theirs. Amy Bradley's case is a reminder that truth is fragile, slipping away in an instant on a ship's balcony, on a foggy pier, in the places we call safe. It's up to us to keep searching, to keep asking, to ensure no one else vanishes without a trace. Amy's family never gave up, and neither should we. Her story lives in the $250,000 reward, in the FBI's open file, and the posters that still line Petersburg's streets. It lives in the questions we ask, the tips we share, the voices we amplify. Join us next time as we unravel Daniel Lewis's mystery, and let's uncover the truth together. Subscribe, comment, share, because somewhere, someone knows what happened to Amy, to Daniel, to the countless others still waiting to be found. Let's make sure their stories don't end in silence.